Welcome to the Fit Life for Busy Parents podcast. My name is Coach Cam, and I wanted to be able to take a little bit of a different approach with this whole podcast and YouTube page as a general. But what I wanted to talk about today is the idea that I am a busy father, and there's some days that I just hate my kids. And the reason why I say that is that I think that this is something that I've struggled with personally, that I don't feel like I can express at times because it's just taboo, right? To be able to talk about your kids in a negative light is seen as like, no, you should love your kids every single moment. It's unconditional love. It's something where, you love the good and the bad about them. And of course, I love my kids, right? They're the center of my world. They're literally every single morning and every single night what I think about and what I wake up to, right? They're every single day that I'm going to work and I'm doing what I'm doing for my clients and for my business and trying to build things up off the ground, that they're the reason why I do it, right? For them and for my wife, obviously. But with that being said, there's also times that they just push my buttons, right? There's times that they go ahead and they see something that they know is not going to sit well with me and they'll do it anyways, right? We talk about the fact that children in particular, right, are very much like almost rude at times, right? Like they don't have that filter, right? And that, depending on our day and how things have been going, can be problematic for us, right, as parents. So I wanted to be able to make this page, make this podcast, make this YouTube page something more than just, hey, I'm a busy parent and I'm perfect and I do this, that, and the other. I don't feel like that's realistic. I don't feel like that's really authentically me. And although I do feel like I have a lot of success with health, and I've obviously been a parent now for, over 5 years, and I feel like my children are doing well. I also acknowledge, hey, there is a space here in parenting that is just not realistic. So, with that being said, I want to be able to go ahead and talk about it in a way of just like what my day-to-day life like can kind of look like and exactly how that manifests into different things that I've been able to learn from to be able to be a better parent, right? So the reason why I say that I hate my kids, right? It's not because I actually hate my kids, meaning that I never love them and anything like that, but there are moments where it's like I want to be able to step back. I want to be able to kind of just take my hands off the wheel, right? And just, hey, I want to be able to do my own thing. And I think that that's something as a parent that a lot of us feel. I've talked to many, many, many parents, especially mothers, right? Who have talked about like locking themselves in the bathroom and just being able to sit there and cry and feel the emotion of it, right? There's obviously parents that, have more babysitting capability and they feel guilty about going out on date nights or they feel guilty about spending more time at work or going to the gym, right? That's a huge one that I hear all the time from clients that they feel guilty about that personal time, right? But I feel like this is something that's a phenomenon, right, with being a parent, that you feel guilty for still being an individual, right? And not centering everything in our lives around our children and spending every waking moment that we're not doing the necessary things, right, of work or whatever it might be, right? Going and running errands, getting groceries, whatever, that time outside of that, that we don't spend it with our children. And I think that this is something that we have to have an open conversation about and acknowledge that it is not only necessary, but okay to feel like I need a break. I need some me time. I need to be able to prioritize some of my own goals and ambitions, right? Because think about it this way, right? And this is how my therapist broke it down to me is that when we go through maybe the first 18 to 30, 35 years for some people, years of our lives, right? We don't have children at that point, right? In this scenario, we are going through life in a very egocentric way, right? We're going to school and being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? What's the thing that you want to be able to achieve with your career? How much money do you want to be able to make? Where do you want to live? What do you want to learn about in school, right? All these things are very driven around what do you want as an individual, right? And the second that we have kids, right? Even the moments before we have kids, right? Meaning like the whole time frame that women, right, the wife or the woman is pregnant starts to become oriented around doctor's appointments, right? And what we can and can't eat for the children, right? What we need to start doing, right? In terms of like our date nights change, right? We can't drink, so now we're doing other things, right? Maybe we're starting to go to classes to learn, maybe we're reading books, right? From that moment that we know that we are becoming a parent, everything changes and it stops being so, what do I want? And more so, what do you want? Right? What does my family want? What do my kids, my wife, everybody else around you want? And that's a big shift, right? In our lives and our perspective in the way that we view things. And I think that we are made to feel bad when we still have some of the egocentric mindset, although that's how life in the world trains us to be, right? But also that if we do act on that, right, and we still do like, hey, I'm gonna go to the gym and be able to prioritize, an hour or an hour and a half, maybe with driving or whatever, to myself, that it's like, shouldn't you be at home with your kids? Like you just spent 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 hours, depending on commutes, a portion of that day at work. You shouldn't go to the gym after, right? You shouldn't, make a really healthy meal for yourself after, right? You should be sitting there and spending time with your kids. You should go through the drive-through, right? And be able to make sure that you can just have food ready so you can spend time with them, right? A lot of the things that are for us and that are for our health, that are for our potential to personal development, for our careers, right? So on and so forth. We shouldn't do those things because we should be focused in on the kids. And although this is a fine ideology in terms of like, yes, we want to give our kids time, we want to be present, we don't want to be fully, right, how we were before with it being so egocentric, but at the same time, we should still be able to do that, right? And so this is a lot of what I help parents deal with is being able to find that balance between everything's about me. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna cook the healthy meal. I'm gonna go to work for 8 hours a week. I'm gonna spend the weekends with my friends. I'm gonna go to the beach whenever I want to, right? I'm just gonna have a babysitter watch my kids, right? Or maybe even for some people, right? Even though this is horrifying, like I'm just not gonna be there for my kids, right? We all know someone who or met someone who, has someone like that, right? Or the opposite of that, right? Where it's like, I literally can't do anything without the kids. I don't want to do a babysitter. I don't want to spend weekends without them. I don't want to go on vacation without them. I don't want to, do anything without them. Even when I go to work, it's hard for me. I need to call them and FaceTime them, right? And those two ends of the extremes, right, aren't necessarily realistic, right? But we shouldn't feel guilty for being a little bit more towards the egocentric. And we also shouldn't be made to feel like we have to be over here on the extreme end of FaceTiming our kids every single time that we're, on our way home from work until we get home, right? We can find that balance in the middle. And so being able to do that comes down to personal time, right? And this is where it's become important to me. Uh, when I can spend time with my kids, right? And making sure that it's that detached time, right? Don't be with your kids and be on your phone, right? Don't be with your kids and be, listening to music or having YouTube videos go on in the background that you're paying attention to and you're not really paying attention. Have that undivided attention with your kids. Give them that time, right? But then also when it's time for you to say, hey, okay, it's bedtime for the kids, it's 8 o'clock, right? My husband's gonna stay home and I'm gonna go to the gym, or we're gonna have, a cousin or a aunt, someone come over and watch the kids. We're gonna go out for a date night, right? Whatever, babysitter, who doesn't matter who it is, right? That you have those times as well, uninterrupted, right? Maybe your drive home you want to have uninterrupted because you just spent 7, 8 hours at work, right? And then you're driving home for 15, 30 minutes, an hour, and you want some time to decompress, right? And it's okay to be intentional, and this is the word here, intentional about your time to be able to still make sure that you have some you time. So being intentional about going to the gym. You got an hour and a half. That includes the drive time. That's all I got. I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to focus. I'm going to be off my phone. I'm going to give myself my 110% attention here. But also when I'm at home with my kids and, let's say I got off at work at 4 p.m. and it takes an hour to drive home and it's 5, I'm going to make dinner. And then from 6 to 8 until they go to bed, I'm going to be fully focused in. We're going to be playing. We're going to be watching videos together. We're going to be learning things, right? So on and so forth. And being able to be intentional about that, right? So that's the first thing that I found for me that's been very, very helpful is making sure that I separate those times, but being intentional in multiple aspects of my life with my work, with my kids, and with my personal development or my health, right? I'll kind of put those two together for me, personal development and health, right? So my reading, breath work, visualization, along with my health, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, right, in terms of this, is being okay with understanding that you're going to have real emotions about your kids. And those are good and bad emotions, right? There's sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like about ready to cry. Just because it's like, how beautiful and miraculous are you? Like, how did you become so perfect when my daughter picks a flower and comes and brings it to me, right? And like, here, daddy, I wanted this for you, right? Or, it was Christmas this last year. My son, right? Actually saved up a few bucks and bought me like this little basketball figurine, right? And it meant the world to me. Like even right now, I'm kind of getting choked up just thinking about it because he thought about me in that moment, right? So there's beautiful moments like that that are very raw. And I mean, you can see it in my eyes, right? Like very tangible. They bring back memories that are very, very evoking. But at the same time, I'd be lying to you if that's 100% of who they are. They also push my buttons where it's like, I'm about to explode. right? And it's okay that our children can evoke that kind of emotions and that you can be in two ballparks like in a split second, right? My daughter could come up and hand me the flower and be like, Daddy, I love you. Here's the flower. And then grab her cup of milk and throw it at me and be like, ah, you're a booger. Run away, right? Like that's the dichotomy of having a child is that they can do things like that in a split second. And it can drive you crazy and it can also, be like the most beautiful moment ever. And I think being able to separate those two and being able to be okay with the fact that I love you to death, there's nothing you can do that's going to make me not want to like ever see you again or want to be around you again and you're the scum of the earth. There's nothing that my children could do, I think, to make me feel that way, right? Or very, very few things that they could do to make me feel that way if there's anything, right? But also on the other hand, it's totally fine that I might want to leave the room and not see my child for a few minutes, right? That you drove me crazy. Get out of the room, please go to the corner, or I'm going to remove myself and I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to do some breath work for a few minutes, or I need to go for a walk, right? Those two things are okay. It doesn't mean that I hate my child and I'm never going to see them again. Right? If I have a moment where they threw milk at me and it just my blood is boiling, but also at the same time, it also doesn't mean that if I want to walk away for a few minutes, that now I'm the scum of the earth because you should just deal with it. They're your children. Deal with it. They're kids, right? I can leave for a few minutes. I can have my time to decompress and I can come back and express to them and be in a better space to be able to do so, right? So I think that's an important thing to remember that you love your kids. We all love our kids. But at the same time, you can hate them in a moment, right? You can be like, oh my gosh, I did not think you could get me to this level. And I think that that's okay. And I don't think you should feel guilty for feeling either one of those ways, right? That maybe you don't feel this way enough with them being the center of the world and oh my gosh, they're so beautiful and amazing, right? That I feel guilty. I don't feel that way 365, 24/7. But it's also not necessary for you to feel guilty when you need 5 minutes to yourself, right? Or you're that parent that I was talking about who locks themselves in the bathroom and cries for a few minutes because the kids are overwhelmed, right? I think it's okay to be understanding that we are human, they are human, and we can have both of those feelings and be okay with right? And that some days are going to be great, some days are going to be bad, some weeks are going to be great, some weeks are going to be bad, some months, years, right, are going to be very troubling and problematic, and some are going to be absolutely mind-blowing, and this is the greatest thing ever, right? So that's another really, really important one is being able to give yourself that space. And then number three, and this one's a little bit different, okay? It's a little bit different than the other ones, but I do feel like it's important for individuals who are married who have children, right? And this is one that, I'll be honest that I feel like we struggle with at times to be able to make time for you guys, your guys' self, right? Meaning like you guys as a couple, right? And the reason why I say that is because I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I work from home. My wife works for a company but works from home. We don't pay for any childcare, right? And that's a huge luxury, right? That we don't have to worry about that financial strain of having babysitting or daycare or anything like that, right? So it's a blessing on that standpoint. But on the other hand, we're constantly with our kids. So it's very hard for us to be Scarlett and Camden, right? Our names instead of mommy and dad. And from that standpoint, it's very, very easy for couples to lose themselves and lose each other if they don't make that time. So there's a few things here that I think are important. There's one that I saw from my parents at a very, very young age, and I remember even crying and my dad having to tell me, like, hey, you want mommy and daddy to stay together, right? And us to continue to be a family. This is what needs to happen. And what that is like regular date nights. Now, everybody's lifestyle, financial situation makes this different. But a date night doesn't necessarily have to be a grand, paint the town red kind of thing, right? A date night could literally be someone watches the kids and you guys go to In and Out or Taco Bell and just sit there and be able to have a meal, right? If you guys need the fast food cheat sheet, you guys know where to go. But outside of that, right? You guys could literally just be in a car very, very cheap. I mean, even just going for a drive, it doesn't even have to be centered around food, right? That's just very common to think of it centered around food. It could be even put the kids to bed early and we watch a movie and just cuddle on the couch, right? It could be anything like that. Or it could be painting the town red. If you guys have that situation, you have the means to babysit and all that stuff, it can be that, right? So that's important one to just keep that connection and be able to have that that ability to be able to continue to talk and chat and all those things, right? Number two, right, is being able to separate some time just to be able to talk with one another. Now, this can be done in front of your children. And honestly, I would even advocate for that because it teaches them what a relationship is, right? And how mommy and daddy treat each other and talk to each other, right? But just asking your spouse how their day went, right? Talking with them. You could even include the children in this, but again, being able to make sure that you guys can still communicate and talk about things that work for you or that you're going through, that you're not going through, that are working for you, that aren't working for you, right? And being able to have those conversations is key for your kids to learn, but also key for you guys to keep good communication and also feel like you care about one another, right? Because it's very easy in the day-to-day life between carpooling and running to the park and taking them to school and making lunch and all these things, right? To just not check in with each other. So being intentional about making sure that you check in with one another. And then number three is making that time, right? That while you're with your kids, right, that you show love and affection. And I know this one kind of sounds like number two because it's like checking in, but the reason why I say love and affection is because for me, right, I did see a good amount of, hand holding, right, arms around each other and stuff like that. But I do know other people who didn't necessarily see that with their parents. Maybe they never saw their parents really kiss. Maybe they never saw their parents hold hands. Maybe they never saw an arm around the shoulder. Maybe they never saw them, holding each other or anything like that, right? Maybe it was always like very separated, right? And there's nothing, I don't want to say that there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, everybody has their own thing and what they feel comfortable with, right? But I do feel like it is important for children to be able to see that it's also okay, right? To be able to have some level of intimate touch, right? Again, it could be just like kind of rubbing someone's back, right? Like rubbing your wife's back, they're kind of sad or something, right? It could be putting an arm around them, holding hands, a kiss on the cheek, right? Whatever you feel comfortable with, but showing that love and affection and care for your significant other, right? Your wife or your husband, I think is very, very important for not only for you guys, right? And keeping that connection, right? Knowing that you're interested in each other, that you're wanting and desiring to be around them and show that you're with them, right? That you guys aren't just having kids together, right? But rather that you're, a couple that you guys are interested in one another, right? But also for your kids as well. So hopefully those ones are good for you guys to be able to implement as well. So all in all, I want to have more open dialogues about parenting, what has been helpful for me in terms of parenting. And obviously, a lot of that stuff will be fitness related too and nutrition related and things, because I know a lot of people come and ask me about that because they're like, hey, you're the fit dad, right? You're the guy who's in amazing shape despite having kids. Like, how do you do it? But at the same time, I feel like I would be doing you guys a disservice to only talk about that aspect of my life and not be able to express and talk openly about other aspects such as this, right? Where it's making that time for yourself, making that time for your significant other, and making sure that your guys' relationships continue to grow. So, all in all, let's continue to turn one day into a lifestyle. I got it right this time. It's this way to point to it. And let's go out there and continue to be great parents. Understand that we can hate our kids and love our kids at the same time and really be able to be the fit parents that we want to be for our children.